Hi, I'm Theron Ramacharaka. I want to talk about mental images, mental imaging, the mental faculty of vision, the faculty of mental vision. If you have been tuned into my channel, and in particular this playlist, the name of which starts with the words Personal Evolution Part 3, you will by now know of the importance, the utmost importance of your ability to create mental images, which you always create anyway, but I mean intentionally and attentively creating mental images. Now, this becomes very important for us in our personal evolution and in our achievement in life, as you no doubt already know. So I want to give you maybe 9 or 10 things to do to enhance that ability. And I'm going to kind of leave it up to you how many of these you want to do and in what order you want to do them in. But by now you should also be aware of some of the basic guidelines for implementing such practices into your daily program of personal evolvement and mental discipline training. Now, I would like you to apply those guidelines. As I've stated before, I could give a week-by-week set of instructions for developing a lot of different techniques together in sequence and in parallel with one another, where they can be done in parallel with one another. I could give like a week 1 set of instructions, and then week 2, week 3, week 4, for a whole year or more. But I want to leave some of this up to you, and because we're all different. As long as you follow the general guidelines that I have given here and continue to repeat and throughout this series of videos in this playlist, I want you to keep learning them and keep applying these general guidelines. But I want you to be able to kind of play a role in designing your own program of development. It also, this way of going about it puts you in a position to have to think more about it, which gives you deeper insight into how it all works. But, it gives you a little bit more work to do on your own. And, this is ultimately something that you do have to do for yourself, your own personal evolvement. So while I give guidelines and give specific techniques that should be followed to a T, where I when I say do this exactly as laid out for the greatest effectiveness and efficiency of the thing, then do that. But this part right here, in this video, largely I'm going to let it up to you. I will give you some specific things to do. And where I say, here, do it like this, then it's, probably the best way to go about that little part. And so go ahead and do it. When I say that, then go ahead and follow that. But how you want to implement this into your practice in general, I'm going to leave it up to you. All right? But so here we go. As you may be aware, or may not be aware, we're always creating mental images whenever we think of things. But to do so intentionally suddenly becomes a little bit more difficult. It's kind of like stage acting or movie acting. We're supposed to kind of just be ourselves, which we're always being, until we're told to do so on stage. Well, just kind of be yourself, and then that suddenly becomes a real chore. And You know, that's what acting training is about. That's one of the things that it's about, is how to do that on command. It's kind of the same with creating mental images. Whenever we're sitting around thinking of something, you know, like something that happened last week, we have a whole picture of it going on in our heads. But many of us, as soon as we're told, create a mental image of such and so, well, then it becomes a bit of a struggle. Well, to be able to do so with precision and clarity, and with clear outlines and in full detail of any specific thing that we want to form a picture of in our minds on purpose, takes some practice. And there are systematic ways to develop that ability. And like I said, I'm going to give you some techniques here, just some things to do and how you want to implement them into your practice for later use that we'll get to later on. Is kind of up to you, but I want you to bear in mind that if you pick one or two of these things to do, don't do all of them every day right at first. Just pick one or two and stick with them. Stick with it. Stick with those one or two for at least, I would say, 21 days. That's one of the general guidelines, remember. You know, let something solidify, crystallize, some technique crystallize for about 21 days, because to really get the full benefit out of any specific technique, you have to do it at least for at least 21 days every day. That makes the foundation for a mental habit. Just the foundation for a habit to start forming, or for the benefit, the habitual benefit of some mental practice to start forming. It takes at least 21 days. So before moving to some next thing in this list, I would say pick one or two of these and do it or them for about 21 days, and then you know, change to something a little bit more difficult or add something else in. Just take it in easy steps. Okay, now another general guideline here when it comes to mental images is to if you're familiar by now, which I hope you are, with the importance of the mental images that we produce, whether we mean to be creating them or not, whether they're just happening or whether we're sitting down to do it on purpose. The quality of our mental images is extremely important in our lives. The kinds of mental pictures that we carry and that we're creating, or that we are allowing in to our minds by way of our sensory input to be transformed into the pictures that we are casting on the screen of our consciousness, is very important, extremely important, much more important than most people ever consider. So if we're allowing in or creating mental images of violence, well, this has a very destructive effect on our psyches and on our personal development, our personal evolution, and our overall achievement, long and short term considered, than we may know. It's extremely important. The quality of our mental images is vital to our success with personal involvement, movement towards true selfhood, self-actualization, however we want to look at it, our maximum performance in life. We want only constructive things that are in correspondence with our refined motives. Hopefully you've gone through that, the rigor of that set of videos that I have posted here in this playlist. We want our mental images to be consistent with our motivating goals. And if a mental image, if we become aware of a mental image going on in our minds that is not consistent with those, then perhaps we want to immediately replace that mental image with something that is. All right. Now, here is here's something very simple to do, and I think I have suggested this elsewhere here in this playlist. But I just want you to do something very simple here to get started. You can practice this for the next 3 weeks, next 21 days if you want to. This is one of those things that you can do. But at least for right now, to just get started, I want you to just take a look at your hand. Place your hand, let's say, on your lap, and I want you to look at it with your eyes open. Just look at it. And lift your hand. Here, let's say right here's my hand. Okay, I'm going to look at it. There it is. I'm looking at my hand now. And I'm going to focus my attention on it as fully as I possibly can. Of course, at the moment, I'm also thinking about making this video, so my attention is a little bit multitasked right now. But I want you, when you do this, if it's after this video or even right now, just place your attention on your hand, your visual attention and your mental attention. When I say visual, I mean look at it. And I make a distinction between that and your mental attention. You know, placing attention on something doesn't mean look at it with your eyes. It means focus your mind on it. In other words, exclude other thoughts. Every time another thought comes in, refocus your attention back on your hand. All right, so visually attend to it and mentally attend to it. Your hand. Okay, now move your hand slowly and keep your eyes focused on it, your gaze pointed at it, right, and your mental attention focused on it. Right? I want you to see it. The third thing I want you to do is make a mental picture of what your eyes are seeing in your head. Make a mental picture of it. In other words, here's my hand, okay, right there. I can see it with my eyes. I'm mentally focusing on it. Also, I am mentally attending to it. Now, I'm also going to create a mental picture of what my eyes are seeing. And that mental picture is going to appear to me, okay, to be right about here on the screen of my consciousness, in my head, you know, my mental image. And actually, mental images are just about right out here in the mental plane, right? Right about out here, a couple inches in front of our forehead. That's why mental pictures seem to be right in front of our head, right in the front of our head. They're actually a little out a little bit further than our physical head, okay, physical forehead. Well, I want you to make the picture in your mind right out about here. See this, okay? There goes that cat panther again, that my cat making noise when I'm making a video. Back there. All right, she's settled down now. All right, so I have three things going on. My eyes are looking at my hand. My mind is focusing on my hand. I'm attending to it mentally. And now I'm adding in a mental picture right about here of what my eyes are seeing. All three things. I want you to know the difference among these three things. The gaze, the physical gaze, you know, what I'm sensing with my eyes, my mental attention on what I'm doing, my mental focus, and my mental image. Those are three different things. Now I want you to become aware of those three different things. That they are not the same thing. You can vary any one of them or any two of them and keep the other two or one the same. Learning to manipulate these as distinct things is very, very powerful mental faculty or ability. All right, but now create the mental image while watching it with your eyes and mentally attending to both. All right? Okay. Now what I want you to do is to put your hand back down, close your eyes, and see the same thing again. See your hand moving. Just repeat in your mind now, visually, what you saw. I want you to just go with a mental image of your hand moving. All right? Like that. But with your eyes closed, still see it and repeat it 3 times. 3 times in a row. Repeat that movement that you saw. All right? With your eyes closed, still see it 3 times. Do it 3 times. Okay? It's just a little exercise in creating a mental image on purpose. And it should be pretty simple because it's something you just saw with your eyes. You just watched with your eyes and you mentally attended to it. And you also created an image of it in your mind while it was happening with your eyes open. So now you're just replaying that mental image 3 times with your eyes closed. All right. Now, next thing to do, here's another thing to do. Here's another one to do. Like I said, that one you just did, the one we just did, you can do that every day for the next 3 weeks until you get really good at it. Really good at it. I mean, master the thing. If this is one that you're going to do for 3 weeks, master it. Attend to it. Okay. Now, here's another one. Here's another one. You can take an object. A pen, for example. I happen to have a pen here. I'm going to look at it. Okay. Now create a mental image of it. Put the pen down. And I want you to see that pen mentally with your eyes open or with your eyes closed. I don't care for this one. Doesn't matter. But I want you to see that pen out here in front of you. Out here. Put it out here. Like I said, mental images really, are taking place in the mental plane out in the front of our forehead. Well, I want you to see that pen right out here in front of you, like it's hanging right there in front of you, like it's right here. Okay? Except it's not physically there. I want you to see it with your mind. The purpose of this one is to project that image out in front of your forehead and see it out there, just hanging in space. Okay? Mentally. I want you to get really good at that. And while you're doing it, move it around. Mentally, not physically. All right? But while you see it out there, watch it slowly turn, spin a little bit, maybe revolve around. Look at it from different angles. Look at it from different angles. And here's another thing you can practice. You can practice the pen staying still and you moving around it. Okay? You moving around it and looking at it from different angles. Underneath, up on top. All right? Practice that. Get good at it. Okay. Here's another one. Here's another one you can do. Form a mental picture of you walking outside and walking around your house or wherever you live. Apartment, whatever. If you live in a huge building, inside a huge building, you picture yourself walking down the hall, walking outside, going around, some familiar scene that's very close to where you're sitting right now. Just close your eyes and take a little trip around your house or whatever's relevant to you. Look at all the objects like you're actually taking the little walk and right back to where you are right now or wherever you started from during the exercise. There's another one you can do. And while you're at it, you can throw in other senses. If there's something that a smell along the way, go ahead and smell it mentally. If there's a sound, go ahead and hear it. Okay? Have the experience. Have the experience. Get direct mental experience of taking this little walk around your house or whatever's relevant, whatever is similar and relevant. That's another thing you can practice. Now here's another good one. Here's another good one. This one is excellent for turning short-term memory things into long-term memory things. This is a very good memory aid. Most people's memory difficulties are short-term memory difficulties. Rarely does a person have long-term memory difficulties. It's usually the short-term stuff. You know, the things that we only need to remember for maybe one or two uses, like where we put our keys last, or something somebody just told us that we're supposed to go do, you know, and then we get there and we forget what they said, or, you know, where we parked the car when we went to the store, you know, if there's a large parking lot, if we went to the local Walmart or whatever. Sometimes we walk out of the store and we just can't quite remember where we parked. You know, we have to go searching for the car. These are short-term memory things, and it's, like I said, usually the short-term memory things that give us a problem. Where did you put your keys? Where's your wallet? What did somebody just tell us? What did we do yesterday that we're supposed to now remember? Somebody says, when you went in town, you know, did you stop at such and such place? If you went into this particular place and you talked to so and so, did you remember to tell them this particular detail? And you might go, oh, geez, I don't remember. These are short-term memory things. We usually don't have much of a problem remembering things from, you know, our childhood, when we were really paying attention to things and they became committed to long-term memory. One of the reasons why we can still remember them is, and why they are long-term memory, is because we paid close attention when these things were happening, and we rehearsed these things in our minds. We went over them and over them as we thought about them. Let's say you took a trip when you were a kid. Your parents took you somewhere, okay? And you can still remember that trip. You can still remember places you stopped off, maybe a particular visitor's center or some candy bar you bought. And I bet you the reason why you can remember these things from a long time ago is because they were new kinds of experiences to you, and you went over them and over them in your mind after they happened because they were so interesting. You really got your attention, and you had mental pictures of those things going on repeatedly. And that's how they got committed to long-term memory. So if we're having short-term memory difficulties now, we can do that same process with things as they are happening on purpose and commit them to long-term memory. And then we circumvent the short-term memory problems because we turn them from short-term memory things into long-term memory things. So here's what you can do. The next time you go park at Walmart, as you are pulling into a parking space, I want you to pay attention to what's around you. What car is next to yours? You know, as you're pulling in, what does it look like as you're pulling in? Just pay attention to what's going on, okay? Well, I mean, look over there at the Walmart sign at the store, maybe 200 feet away or 100 feet away. Look at it. Look at the surroundings. Listen to the sounds. Listen to the sound of your car, whatever's going on. Picture, see the people walking by. If a horn blew nearby, somebody honked their horn and somebody maybe they know that they see walking by, Pay attention to these things, all right? And as soon as you stop your car, take another look around, where you are physically in the parking lot, the surroundings, the sounds, what you are doing physically in the car. Pay attention to these things, and then close your eyes and repeat the whole thing. Instant replay of pulling into that spot and everything you've noticed about where you've parked and what things go with it. Sounds, smells, the feel of the steering wheel, everything. Relive that experience, that last 10 seconds or so that you paid attention to as you're pulling into that spot. Your relative position to the store, any lamp posts, light poles or that you're parked near. Any of these things, all the circumstances involved, as many as you possibly can that you paid attention to. Once you've stopped your car, before you get out of the car, instant replay all of it in your head as clearly as you can 3 times in a row. Okay? And you can talk to yourself while you're doing it, as you're going through it. You can say these things to yourself. Everything that you are noticing in your instant replay. The stores to my left, about 100 feet away. If I look straight out my window, I can see, I'm looking straight at the W of the sign Walmart on the front of the building. There's a blue car to my right, about 15 feet to my left. There's a light pole, and so forth. You can tell yourself these things. The more you fit into it, the better. And do it all 3 times in a row. And pay attention to it and to how it all feels. Okay? Then get out of the car and go in the store. And I bet you when you're coming back out of the store, you don't have very much trouble finding your car. In fact, 5 years later, you might still remember where you parked your car that day. Because you will have committed it to long-term memory. Mostly through the use of the mental images. So, you can look at it as a memory training thing. You can look at it as a mental image training thing. Look at it however you want. I'm proposing it as a way, as a cool way to practice creating mental images on purpose. But it has a lot of side benefits, like learning how to make long-term memory things out of short-term memory things so that you won't forget them. Things that you need to remember. Imagine the benefits of making a good, strong practice out of this. More benefits than you can probably imagine right now. Okay. Here's another one. Let me see. I have made some notes here. I mentioned moving your hand, seeing an object in front of your head, the quality of your mental images, the parking. You can do the same thing with your keys when you come home. Once you come home from Walmart, after you've done the parking thing, all right? And then you lay down your keys inside your house. Do the same thing again with where you put your keys. Same procedure. Again, it only takes a few seconds to do this, really. Especially the better you get at it, you can focus right in on this procedure, this technique, and just get really good at this technique. Okay, you can do it with your keys then too. Now, do you remember have you got to the emotional closure technique video in this playlist? Right, I've noticed that not very many people have looked at that. It kind of sounds wimpy. Emotional closure, oh boy. Well, that must be for people who have problems with emotional closure. Well, who doesn't? All right? But here, look. If you've been hesitating to do that because it just seems really wimpy, I mean, maybe you didn't even want to look at the video because it might make you feel like a little bit of like a loser if you feel like you have to look at that. Well, look at it and start incorporating this into your evening routine before going to sleep. All right? And if it helps, do it now as a mental image creating mastery technique. Do it for that reason. All right? Go have a look at that video. Emotional closure technique. I think that's what I called it. Use it as a mental image creating technique. You'll gain great mastery over your mental images. Oh boy. I promise you that. I'll tell you something I used to do. I did the linear attention technique for 6 months once. 6 months. Twice a day. That video is here too. Linear attention technique. I practiced that for 6 months. Once I got somewhat proficient with it, let's say into about the second month, I started to notice that, now, let me interject here. I was working full time. I was also a full-time college student. And I realized that, I was a junior. No, I was a freshman and a sophomore in the San Diego Community College District. I was going to 3 different campuses for my curriculum in the San Diego Community College District, City College, Mesa College, and there was a campus, I think, in Miramar also. I was taking classes in all 3, plus I was working near the Miramar Top Gun School. I was working in a data management built in a data management office, okay, in the evenings, 8 hours, 40 hours a week. And I had a full-time curriculum, and I realized that if I wanted to get into UC Berkeley in the philosophy department, well, I had to get all A's, which means I had to really bust my butt. Well, I did it. I got 16 A's out of 17 courses. And, the one that I didn't get the A in was Japanese language. I got less than an A, but that one that didn't keep me out of UC Berkeley. I did get into UC Berkeley, and I did get all the way through, and I did get a pretty high GPA in the philosophy department. But anyway, one of the ways that I accomplished getting all these A's and still being able to get enough sleep every night, all right, while working full time, was in about the second month of my linear attention technique practice, I started doing this emotional closure technique thing that I had come up with, or that I had heard of somewhere. I don't know what it was. Maybe I came up with it. I'm not sure, but anyway, I have given it to you. But here's what I would do. I started to notice that with the linear attention technique thing going on, I was paying much more attention. I was able to focus much better in class, in my classes. And I thought, I guess maybe I came up with the emotional closure technique all by myself, on my own, and I have since then given it to other people to do, clients that I've had in their achievement training, and those who have done it have found that it served many purposes, and especially in, emotionally closing the day, so that there was minimized emotional baggage carrying on through day to day, every day, from days before, weeks before, and if they keep doing it all their lives, much less emotional baggage going on, because they're taking care of things before they get to sleep every day, right? But here's what I found very useful for school. I knew that my attention was much more focused in class. And I decided that before I went to sleep, just after doing my linear intention technique practice, I would then, now that my mind was rather focused, right, sit there, close my eye, with my eyes closed, and run through visually and auditorily with my mental senses, okay? Mental senses. Just my mental visual sense and my mental auditory sense. Run through the day in my head. Every detail. Well, I got better at it the more I did it. The more I did it, the more I was able to do it in full detail from the moment I woke up to the moment I sat down, did the linear intention technique, and now started doing my emotional closure technique. At that time, I wasn't calling it the emotional closure technique. I was just calling it like the daily review or something like that. But I got so good at this by like the 4th month of my linear intention technique practice that I was able to recall every detail accurately at the end of the day. Yes, it turned into the emotional closure technique later. This was just a daily review so that I could remember everything. That's what it started out as. That's what the emotional closure technique, that's how it started. That was the beginning of its evolution into the emotional closure technique. Yep. It was just the daily review so that I could remember everything. My purpose was, I mean, now that I was paying much more attention to what's going on in class because of the linear attention technique, now I was running through the day. I could see everything. With practice, this took some practice, this took daily practice, but I got to the point by about the 4th month of the linear attention technique, I had now been, let's say, doing the daily review 2 months. I was able to run through the events of the day, clearly see myself driving, all the red lights I stopped at, the cars that passed me, the cars I passed, everything that happened, everything that got written on a blackboard or a whiteboard or that I wrote in my notes, the instructor's voice, the words they used, everything that happened, every detail. And I would run through it. And the better I got at it, the faster I could run through each of these details. And I eventually got so that I could, by the time I got to the end of the day where I was now sitting down and doing that, also then run it all backwards. Back to the very moment that I woke up. You know, I could run through the day forwards and then backwards. Like a movie in my head. With full sound, full sight. And you know what? I got to the point where it was just kind of a redundancy to even take notes in class anymore. Because when it came to test time, I remembered everything. I remembered everything. And this is largely due not just to the attention, the focus of attention, but also then to the review of affairs using mental images. All right? So now, if you thought it was a little wimpy to have an emotional closure technique, well, now do it to get really good with mental images. You'll not only get emotional closure, but you'll get to the point where you remember everything. And I tell you, if you do this emotional closure technique or, the daily review in the form of emotional closure, all right, and you're also doing the linear attention technique thing, all right, you do the emotional closure thing 3 times in a row every night, you'll be committing all this stuff to long-term memory. You'll probably remember almost everything that happens in your life for a very long time. But just do it. Just do it for the purpose of getting really good with mental images. Okay? That one's one that I want you to do. I want you to start doing it. The emotional closure technique for whatever reason you come up with. All right? But what would be the best reasons? Your motivating goals. That work you've already done, right? Right? Linked to your uh, purest, highest desires. The one burning desire. Whatever you do, just link it up with your very highest ideals. Now here's another one. Here's another one for good mental imagery practice. Look at an object. I don't advise focusing on anything but what you are doing when you're driving, which most people don't do. They think of just about everything except driving. Might drive a few miles and not even remember having driven those few miles. Well, it's a good idea to practice. Use driving as an attention training tool. Focus on what you're doing and learn to do that. That's really hard to do. People think they have great control over their attention. If you're somebody who finds that you can't remember having driven the last few miles, well, then that's a pretty good indication you might not have as great control over your attention as you think you do. And just try focusing only on what you are doing with no other thoughts going on while you're driving. See if you can do that for a half an hour. That's hard to do. It's hard to do. So I don't advise, thinking of something else while you're driving. But if you're going to think of something else, try this. Try this. Or just try it while you're not driving. I'm just saying driving is kind of a fun time to do this. If you see an object, you can do this right now. Look at an object, okay? Here's a pen. It's the same pen as before. Look at it and reverse it in time. Reverse it in time. Back to its origin. See it being built. Just imagine how it was constructed. Even back to the planning of the pen. The people who sat around and talked about what color they're going to make the pen. This one's from my bank. It's blue. Has red letters, the name of my bank. Has a certain design. Has little convolutions here. You can probably see them right here. Right there. Somebody decided to make it like that. Okay, you can imagine people talking about it, making little drawings of it. It's a prototype being made, people agreeing on it. Just this whole process. Okay? The plastic being molded for it, the whole thing, coming together, it being produced, manufactured, distributed, somebody putting it out in these containers that is in at my bank. Every branch I go to has a whole bunch of them. You just grab handfuls of them if you like. They're free. Right up to this one being in my hand. I can picture that. And then fast forward. Just keep on going in time. What happens to this pen? It finally, maybe ending up in a dump somewhere or out on a street, getting run over by a car, getting crushed, and finally, maybe in a couple of 100 years, it's just crumbled into tiny little bits of plastic that nobody can even see anymore. Just its life, the life cycle, the life of this pen. Picture it. Now you can do that while you're driving. You look at a sign as you're passing a sign. Just in your head, see that sign being erected. The trucks coming, guys getting out to put up the sign, put the sign there, and then, maybe the sign's bent a little bit. Maybe the signpost is bent, see a car having hit it or whatever happened. I don't know. But then, see it finally one day decaying and its life being just done. Just the whole life cycle of a thing. Just picture it. Picture it. You can do it fast. It might only take a couple of seconds, just kind of right through its whole life. That's a good exercise for mental imagery. Just see a thing from its beginning to its end. It'll give you a different perspective on affairs too, if you do that. You can call it the life cycle of things, that technique. The life cycle of a thing, right? Now, what's this one saying? All right, here's another one to picture. Here's another mental image to create. Now, this will come in useful later on in various ways. Now, think of this. Where is your will located in your body? I mean, where are you in your body? Typically, we would think of ourselves as somewhere like right up in here in our head, right? That's where we are. When we think of a hand, the hand is out here, okay? We're kind of connected to it, yeah. But our will, or our center of consciousness, isn't in our hand, right? It's kind of like in a head. Well, if you give it a try, you can picture yourself, your awareness, okay? It's in your head. And out there's your hand. Now, can you picture the difference between that and if your center of awareness, let's say, or your center of will, with respect to, its position in your physical body being, let's say, right down here instead of there, a little closer to your hand. It takes a little bit of effort, right? I mean, just kind of like, this is a kind of almost a different kind of mental picture than we've been talking about up to this point here in this video, right? It's kind of like moving your center of will. There's a picture that goes with it, too. Right? It's a little easier to get that picture of where your center of will, or your awareness and your power to act, your power to make an image, in fact, to here than it is all the way out into your hand. Just get a little closer to your hand. It takes some effort. I want you to practice that. It might not be the first thing to practice here during your first 21 days. That one's a little bit more difficult. But as you might imagine, you start getting good at this within your own body to the point where you can move your center of will focus along with the mental imagery that goes with that all the way down into your foot. The next thing you're going to be able to do is move it outside your body. Well, anyway, or into your heart. What do you think of that? Just try to get it down to here. Down here. Okay? Just picture your head being up above you. Like, you don't, okay, here's another way to go about this. All right? Your center of attention, your mental attention doesn't move, but your body moves up about half a foot or a foot. So, you don't have to move down inside your body for this. You can just stay still and your body just goes up. Just picture it. So that now you're like looking out through your chest. You can try that. Here's another thing to do. Take an object, a pen, for example, and visually study it. Give it 5 minutes. You can practice this one for 21 days. Visually study it, and I mean really study it. Every detail, very closely, full attention. You can consider, look, you can consider all of these attention training exercises too. Because they're all doing that as well. If you're focusing on them, if you're really mentally attending to these things, then they are attention training exercises as well. As a matter of fact, why not consider these mental imagery training exercises, attention training exercises, power of will training exercises, all at the same time? Why not? And memory training exercises. Why not? Consider them to be all of those. Intend them to be all of those. And whichever one helps you at the moment, fine, go ahead. Make that one the top thought in your head about it. Your top intention at the time. And start by invoking the mood of calm confidence before you do any of these. Bring as much of this into play as you can. As a matter of fact, I highly recommend that if you are now moved into phase 2 with the calm attention technique, phase 2, in which you are now implementing the mood of calm confidence into daily activities, well, summon the mood of calm confidence before you do any of these. Before you engage in these, just summon the mood of calm confidence. Boom, there's the mood of calm confidence. And then go into these exercises, whichever one you're doing. Okay? If you're incorporating any of these into your morning regime, then find the right spot. Use the guidelines that I've given you. Find the right spot to put in this practice. Each one of these might just take like a minute or two, whichever one you're doing. Right? Already have the mood of calm confidence in place. Already have gone through your list of motives, your LOM. Already have done that. Find the right spot. And of course, it should be well before your consciousness expansion exercise, which is the last, or technique, which is the last thing to do before you get on with your daily activities in the morning. Okay. Now, of course, this won't have to do with the emotional closure technique. Doesn't apply because that's at the end of the day. That's at the end of the day. All right. Study the object. 5 minutes. Visually. Study it. Full attention. Look at every detail. All right. And then close your eyes and mentally study it again. Doesn't have to be in the same sequence that you did visually, physically visually. But if you put 5 minutes into studying that pen really closely, you should be able to do it in any other sequence with your eyes closed. But study it again. See what you can learn about the pen while studying it with your mental sense of vision. All right? See if you can learn anything new about the pen. In other words, use that mental sense of vision, your mental vision, right, as a creative thinking tool. That should be a clue. Another way to use mental imagery. Later on, it'll be used in creative thinking, which is, a primary component of achievement, really. Okay. Was there another one here that I had written down for you? Well, there was one more. I'll just go ahead and add it in here, and then we'll end this video. Mentally see your body, your physical body, as being something that's outside of you. Now, I don't mean see your body over there. No, I mean you are centered in your body, but I want you to see all parts of your body as being things that are your instruments of action, okay? Instruments of physical action, but see them as being external to you. In other words, I'm trying to get you centered in your true self. Core control. Remember that phrase? I've talked about that a few times. Core control, the true self, the real you. That's not your body. All right? But I don't mean like relocate mentally in your mind as a mental image, relocate your body somewhere else and then look at it. Imagine you're looking at it from afar. No, I mean it's right where it is. It's right where it is, but every part of it is something that is an external thing to the real you. Kind of like, okay, look, here's this pen, right? And inside the pen is the ink thing. I don't know what you call it, but if this pen doesn't even come apart unless you break it. But all right, if I were to open up the pen, we've all done this, right? You open up the pen and you pull out the ink cartridge thing, okay? And then imagine like a fine imaginary line going straight down through the center of it. Just not even a real line, just like the very core of that ink thing, the center of the pen, right? Well, now, just imagine, in a sense, everything outside of that center line going down through the center of the pen is external to that center line. So in other words, the whole pen hasn't removed itself somewhere else and the center line stayed here. No, that's the kind of thing I'm getting at when I say don't picture yourself, your body being somewhere else. As I don't mean that by external to you. I mean external to the real you in the same sense as this whole pen is external to some imaginary, infinitely non-physical center line going down through the pen. Everything out from it is external to it. I want you to picture your entire body being, in that sense, external to you. Now, if you have a thought, I want you to see the thought. Picture the thought. Whatever that means to you. If picture the thought doesn't make any sense right now, then just imagine the thought as being more like your body than the real you. Something external to you. And the same with an emotion. Go ahead, have an emotion. And picture it, or just imagine it as something external to you. Your body, your thoughts, your emotions, as being external to the real you. But they haven't moved anywhere else. They're just external to the real you. Picture that stuff. That one's a little bit more difficult than some of these others as well. Maybe wait till later for that. I'm just giving you a whole, 10 different things here. 9 or 10 different things. All in one video. And like I said at the very beginning of this video, I could, space these out over the next, 3 months as a progression of things to do, But I haven't done that. I'm going to let it up to you. Just remember the general guidelines. The rule of 21 and the rule of 3, at least. And then full attention and so forth. Repetition. You should know some of the rules by now. And by now, you know the laws by which these things operate. I want you to recall them. Be aware of them. Gone over them 2 or 3 different ways now. Or depending on where I place this video in the sequence. At least one way, you've been introduced to the laws at work, rhythm, vibration, polarity. Just try to find them at work. Give it some thought. Try to find them at work in these things. As much as you can. All right. So there you go. Mental imagery. We'll get more. We'll do more with this. Just want to get you going in this direction here a little bit more than I have so far. Okay, there we go. I now have spoken for, well, just a little 1 hour, over 1 hour exactly. I think that's adequate. Be well. Be well, guys.